If you're thinking about going electric but you're not ready to commit, then a hybrid could be a good stepping stone for you. The technology's come a long way in the last 20 years, and if you're after that SUV form with a bit of added practicality and all-wheel drive capability, then the Subaru XV hybrid could be the car you're looking for. Looking similar to, but a bit smaller than the Outback, the XV is technically an Impreza on steroids. It sits higher, has full-time all-wheel drive, so it can go most places on-road and even a few off-road. The XV has a 4-cylinder 2-litre engine which outputs 110 kilowatts of power and 196 newton meters of torque. It's helped along by a 12.3 kilowatt electric engine which kicks in whenever the car is travelling at low speed or cruising along the highway. Average fuel economy is 6.5 litres per 100 kilometres, which is average. And then at the back we have a reasonably small boot, only 345 litres of space, expandable to just over 900 with the rear seats down. It's enough room for my camera gear and maybe a bit of shopping, but not much else. There's no spare tyre, but you do get a tyre repair kit. That space has been taken up by the rear battery pack, but the good news is that the floor is pretty flat. All right. Inside the XV, you cannot fault the build quality. Everything is really solid and well put together. There's a nice mix of contrasting materials and it's an interesting looking design. There's two center console screens. The top one is purely car information, so fuel efficiency, charge of the battery, what angle your car is sitting at, that kind of thing. And then the lower screen is purely infotainment. Now this is an L model XV, so there is no native navigation. You've got to upgrade to the top spec S model for that, but it does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto plus digital radio as standard. There's also a CD player. Don't see too many of those anymore. Underneath that, some very basic air conditioning controls. We've got two USB inputs, a couple of good sized cup holders, a nice deep center console bin with some more USB chargers in there, and a 12-volt output too. To go with a hybrid car comes a hybrid instrument cluster. It's digital and analog, some basic functions controlled through the small center screen there. The steering wheel is wrapped in leather. I'm not sure if it's actually real leather or fake. It looks real, but it just doesn't feel that nice. It's got some orange stitching on it, which looks really good, but the overall feel is just a little bit plasticky. The buttons have a nice solid feel to them though, and there's lots of controls on here, plus the paddles to change the gears. The seats are reasonably comfortable. There's no electric adjustment, and they're covered in this interesting hexagonal pattern, which actually looks pretty good, and there's some leather accents here with orange stitching. Back seat. It's actually pretty good. There's a good amount of room in here. I'm behind my own seating position. I'm 190 centimeters and I'm not touching the seat in front of me. I'm impressed. Sitting up quite high though, with my head rubbing against the ceiling, which is not exactly ideal, but we do get a armrest here with a couple of cup holders, and that's about it for the back of the XV. Oh, apart from the cool looking plastic here on the rear door trim that's on the front as well. It looks like carbon fiber, just a nice little touch, but there's no rear air vents and no rear USBs. So it would be untrue to say that this car is overpowered. 2-litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine, yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's adequate. It's just nothing exciting about it at all. The ride and the steering are both really good though. It's fairly softly sprung. It's a very smooth ride actually. And dynamically it's not bad either. There's two drive modes, S and I, and you control them from buttons here on the steering wheel. In I mode, the car just kind of gets along normally. With S mode selected, I've noticed that the engine revs seem to jump up by about 1,000, but there's not a huge change to the performance of the car. It's still pretty steady. It is a satisfying feeling though when the engine cuts out altogether and the electric motor takes over, and everything becomes very quiet. And you especially notice that when you're traveling at low speeds, parking the car, for example, in a car park, because the car gives off a bit of a sci-fi style electric hum, which actually sounds pretty cool. This car has a CVT, so there are no gears. And some CVTs are better than others. I know a lot of people aren't fans of them. This particular one is not very good though, I have to say. It's kind of wandering around all over the place. If I change gears with the paddles on the steering wheel, nothing much seems to really happen. The hybrid technology in this car does work very well though. It is very quiet and very smooth when the engine is switching off and on, which is something that not all manufacturers are good at doing, but Subaru have nailed it. The small SUV market is one of the most competitive in the automotive industry, and at just under $40,000, the Subaru XV Hybrid is a little bit overpriced, I think. The fuel savings from the hybrid technology in this car just don't justify its inflated price, and also the lack of storage in the back doesn't really help it sit at the top of the pile. For about the same money, you could get yourself into a fully electric MG SUV, and for even less money, you could get into a Kia Seltos, which is much bigger. I think it looks a lot better and carries a lot more stuff. So at the end of the day, there's a fair amount of homework to be done deciding which small SUV you want to buy.